Hello, I'm Reaper Goblin, and I will be showing you a few basic things you need to know for Clan Wars. So we'll start off by eating pizzas in the most efficient way. Obviously, as all of you should know, anchovy pizzas are what you should be using for tanking at all times. The most efficient way of eating these pizzas is eating the full pizzas first, one at a time, not too fast, not too slow. It should look something like this. That's quick. Once you're down to all the halves, it should be a lot slower, as you can see right now. Later on I will show you how to eat the pizzas in an actual tanking situation. Now that you know how to eat pizzas in the most efficient manner, let's talk a little bit about styles. You'll either be using the ranged style or the magic style. The magic style is usually broken up into two different parts. You'll either be melee binding or blasting. If you do not have the range requirement of 95 range, you will have to bind or blast. Before we get into the actual gear and setup, let's talk a little bit about a few essential items that you should have regardless of what style you have. Rune Gauntlets and Rune Berserker Shield can be bought from the Grand Exchange and charged at Fisto Guthix in exchange for tokens. The two melee weapons that are highly suggested for either style would be the Gravite Rapier and the Gravite 2H Sword, although it is preferred that you bind with a Gravite Rapier. Other items that are useful in Clan Wars would be the Explorer's Ring and the Hamper. Both of these items can be received after completing all tasks in the Lumbridge and Draenor Village diary. If you have not done so, it is highly suggested that you try to get through as many tasks as possible in order to get at least an Explorer Ring 2 or 3. When you're ranging, it is highly suggested that you wear a longbow sight. If you do not have a longbow sight, you should highly consider using the magic style. The proper range gear is as follows: the longbow sight, d'hide body, d'hide chaps, and the d'hide vambraces. This should give you a bonus something like this. If you are binding or blasting, it is not highly suggested that you wear a hood, so the best possible gear that you could have would be this: the Druidic Mage top and bottom, along with swanky boots that give you a +1 bonus, Rune Gauntlets, Rune Berserker Shield, and a Gravite Rapier. The bonus should look something like this. Likewise, if you are blasting, the gear that you should be wearing is the Druidic top, Druidic bottom, swanky boots with the addition of an Arcane Blast necklace if possible, which gives you an extra 5% damage on blasts, and a Berserker's Shield, which is highly suggested, and you should get a bonus something like this. If you do manage to get a Gravite staff, that would be the best staff to use, or you can use a fire staff or an air staff. Now that we've went over the food and the gear that you will need for the styles, let's go over the actual inventory setup. If you're ranging, you want to place your bow and d'hide along with the staff on the top row of your inventory so that it is as close as possible to the quick prayer. Following that, you should have several rows of anchovy pizzas stacked, ready to be eaten while tanking, followed by a hamper if obtainable and a strength potion, which is highly necessary. Similarly, if you are binding, your robes and d'hide, if necessary for tanking, should be as close as possible to the quick prayers. The 3 runes for the binds should be all the way at the bottom, along with a strength potion and the hamper if obtainable. Also, make sure that you are wearing swanky boots while you're binding. If you are blasting and binding, your robes and d'hide body, if you are using it for tanking, should be nearest to the quick prayers. Your runes that you will need for binding and blasting should be lined up on the side like so, along with your hamper if obtainable and strength potion. If you have a Gravite staff, you should have fire runes as well. Make sure that you have either a melee weapon or a ranged weapon in case the person you're attacking is praying mage, in which you will have to switch to the style. In order to maximize the amount of damage you do while you're blasting, you should also try to get an Arcane Blast necklace, which increases your damage. Regardless of what style you're using, you basically have two ways of tanking. The first method of tanking is by wearing full rune and praying mage. The quick prayers would look something like this. The second way of tanking is by praying either melee or range, depending on how many rangers and meleeers the other clan has. This has to be done with at least a D'hide body on, if it is an all styles war. The quick prayers would look something like this. Either melee or range. Mage praying should be only used if the war is an all styles war, and for beginners I would suggest you try to pray melee or range. As you get more experience, you can try to pray mage and get more drag out of it. Your main goal if you're praying range or melee is to switch between the two prayers depending on when you are bound and when you are moving. The main goal of when you're mage praying is to constantly keep moving and try to waste as much run as you can. Just so you know the difference, when you're mage praying, the time that you are bound decreases from 5 seconds to around 2 seconds. In an all styles war, make sure that you are not melee or range praying with full rune on. If you are melee or range praying, try to switch between the two prayers based on when you are hugging around obstacles. This can result in the meleeers not being able to attack, in which time you will need to pray range. When you are bound, you will need to switch back to the melee prayer. During wars, the fallen leaders will often tell you to use your buffers. Basically, what this means is that you will have to use your prayers according to what style you will use. For example, if you are ranging, you will need to use the Eagle Eye prayer, which gives you an extra 15% on range. If you are meleeing, you will have to use your 15% attack. If you are blasting, you will have to use your 15% magic. This is very crucial to winning every war. You should always buffer down to around 400 prayer. You can also try to manage your prayer to increase the amount of time that you have them on by switching to 10% and 5% when you're getting down to 400 prayer or less.